This episode of Dispatches from Planet Albany is brought to you with support by New York State United Teachers, which represents more than 600,000 educators and school-related professionals in New York. Dispatches is also supported by the public affairs firm O'Donnell & Associates. For more information, check out o'donnellsolutions.com.
This episode is also brought to you by Citizens for Affordable Rates. New York's car insurance costs are nearly double the national average, and state lawmakers must take action to make driving more affordable. Learn more at citizensforaffordablerates.com.
Mr. Palmisano, your first venture into the budget. So.
Yes, Madam Speaker. I'm very nervous now.
I've also declared war on potholes, so here's the first shot across the bow.
Well, as you know, with Planet Albany, there's always something that makes the planet turn.
And it's this amazing view of D.C., and Eddie Vedder comes out, and he goes, "You have a cigarette?" And I've never smoked in my life, but if I had, I wish that was the moment.
And this strategy takes us from potholes to knotholes.
I would like to say it was a pleasure, Mr. Kim. But I'm on the road.
I'm David Lombardo, and this is Dispatches from Planet Albany, a podcast about power and politics in state government. And on this episode, we're exploring an unlikely comeback as Republican Marc Molinaro plots his return to the state assembly a decade and a half after leaving the chamber for a career that saw him serve as Dutchess County executive, a member of Congress, and most recently, a high-ranking transportation official in the Trump administration. And sprinkled in there was a 2018 unsuccessful run for governor. So given that backdrop, the decision to run for an assembly seat south of the Capitol, after initially flirting with a run for Congress from a North Country seat, has left a lot of Planet Albany followers scratching their head, which is why we're happy to have the Cairo resident in the studio to explain his thinking. Well, thank you so much for making the time, Mark. Long time no see.
It's been a while. Happy to be back with you.
So let's get to the big question that's on everybody's mind. It's the one you're always getting asked first, and that's about why the assembly. And in previous interviews, you've talked about giving up your role in the Trump administration to be closer to home, but still wanting to be involved in public service. Public service, though, can take a lot of different forms. So why the assembly and not something else?
You're going to run my campaign for town board or town legislature?
Some people would argue that being a town supervisor is more substantive than being a member of the assembly minority.
Yeah, I will tell you, when I go around the district, the 102nd Assembly District, nobody asks the question, which is interesting, right? Because the average voter is basically asking, one, why should I vote for you, and two, what do you bring to the table? And they don't get behind the curtain and see these positions as invaluable or valuable or not valuable at all. They want to know what you can do for them. I'll save you the pageantry, but I do believe this. There are a couple of things. I actually still believe in public service. I believe that there's value in contributing, and I know where my experience, my both professional and political experience, my knowledge base, and where I think can be most impactful remains here. And I know, as
a member of the Assembly Minority Conference.
Yeah, well, see, but that's part of the problem, right? Because your view is that I'm getting this from the tone of the question.
Sure.
Your view is unless you're at 51%, you don't have value.
No, I think you can impact the conversation.
Yeah. So you answered the question.
Steer things in a certain direction, but you've also, when talking about running for governor again, you said, been there, done that. So why doesn't the same thing apply in the case of serving in the assembly?
Yeah, well, in this particular case, the communities that I've grown up in, the communities that my kids go to school in, are struggling hard, and I believe that I can be of value to the people of the 102nd Assembly District. I actually still believe that there's the capacity to help solve longstanding water and environmental issues that remain in our communities. Mm-hmm. I believe there's value organizing regional economic development plans so that our communities can grow within the challenges that exist in New York. And I believe that they need a voice in Albany who, whether invited or not to the table, can talk about the need to drive down property taxes, understands why energy costs are so high, how to confront unfunded mandates at state level coming down onto county and local governments. I believe that I can be and still remain capable of being a very valuable, mediator in those conversations. I also believe here in the Capitol that we need competent, capable voices, and there are a great number of them who are willing to offer alternative views. And what I'd offer to you is, I came to the state legislature, 100 years ago, but we came in
easy. 2007 wasn't that far.
Fair enough. But I came in when we were talking about sweeping ethics reforms and procedural changes that would make the place work. And you know what happened? They've abandoned all of them.
I was going to say, you could still talk about all that stuff today.
Right, but my point is that you've kind of let it happen. The majority has let it happen. And the taxpayers and voters don't understand why it's happened. Why is it that the state assembly doesn't convene for debate anymore? Why don't you have to be in your seat to vote any longer?
Hold over the pandemic?
No, but that was swept away in 2006 and 2007 because of decades of erosion of democracy, transparency, some degree of transparency, public engagement. And so I just think that for me, my experience and my passion, it comes together to be, I think, an effective member of the state legislature. The other is I'll offer to you is I served in the minority, and frankly, even in Congress, having the slight majority in the House didn't mean anything when you had a Senate, a Democratic majority, and a Democratic president. You build skills that allow you to work across the aisle in order to get some things done.
Right, but I mean, saying you co-sponsored a majority bill in the Assembly is not the same thing as in Congress, where yes, the majority has power, but the minority has a lot more power in D.C.
We wouldn't have the property tax cap were it not for the Assembly Republicans.
That's, I'd say we wouldn't have it if not for Andrew Cuomo, the Senate Republicans.
The Senate, at the time, the Senate Republicans weren't embracing the property tax cap. I can assure you, I was here.
Okay.
This was a constant commitment to trying to freeze and slow the rate of growth of property taxes. And ultimately, sure, obviously the Senate Republicans led on the issue. Well, they delivered on their side. In their House, they delivered votes for it. But it took a lot of us to have to push that needle over the course of a decade in order to have it happen. The Hudson River Valley Greenway was going to be jettisoned by Governor David Patterson. It wasn't the Assembly Democrats who saved the Hudson River Valley Greenway. I did. And by the way, through a single letter-writing campaign and conversations with majority members who, at the time, if I remember correctly, Richard Brodsky and ultimately Kevin Cahill said, you know what, he's right. We can't get rid of the Hudson River Valley Greenway. It took Republicans and Democrats. I worked with Jerry Solomon and Maurice Hinchey to spearhead the Hudson River Heritage designation all those years ago. So there's the capacity to still get stuff done if you define if your definition of success isn't winning a vote on the floor.
Sure. So where does the fervor for the Assembly come from? Because as of a couple months ago, you were interested, based on reporting in the New York Post and elsewhere, in a run for Congress. So when did Congress no longer become the plan and Assembly became the plan?
Well, those were the reports. I was definitely being asked to consider running in the 21st congressional district.
Well, the reports were that you were reaching out to county chairs.
I understand what the reports were.
Are those wrong?
The reports were what they were. I was being strongly encouraged to run.
Did you not reach out to the Conservative Party chair, Jerry Kassar, and say, hey, could we potentially get a cross-endorsement here?
I would want to talk about the conversations I had with Jerry Kassar, other than to say to you that there was a concerted effort to encourage me to run for the 21st district, and I began to make calls to see if that was actually of some degree of interest. But again, for me, it's not fervor in the way you're defining it.
But when did the switch happen? When did you say, I'm not doing the Congress thing anymore and I want to do Assembly? Was there a specific event that prompted the transition?
I wouldn't frame the conversation the way you have. I wanted to get back to public service in a way that was more committed, more local, more engaged in my community, and frankly wanted to be more present for my family. And this became an opportunity that I still have to earn. And I think there's real value here, and frankly, want to commit to being not only an effective legislator, but an advocate for the district and the people I would hopefully represent.
So there are a lot of different ways to approach serving in the state legislature. It has a constitutional role that is primarily session-based, right? It's primarily around passing bills, but almost no one takes that approach. Most people are much more active. They're doing community events. It's a job all year round, and as you see with the budget process, takes some long nights. So are you concerned at all about serving in the state legislature being kind of defeating of that idea of being close to home? If you want to do this job well, isn't this all-consuming?
It it is, and you go home at night.
Sure.
And I live 32 minutes from the state capitol and don't and can go home at night. And it's the same as having a full-time commitment to any profession. And so having done it, having served in 11 counties in the 19th congressional district, I can assure you that this provides an opportunity to be really close, not to home, but close to the people and in the counties, Otsego, Albany, Delaware, and Greene counties, to be close to those communities and really engage. And to the point of the broader question, that's the kind of public official that I've always been. I mean, I've always joked it's like I want to be the mayor of the district, meaning I want to be the person the Republican and Democrat office holder, community leader, business leader reaches out to and to try to get direction, advice, and to build the relationships, which I have, with departments here in state government, ensure that somebody's advocating on their behalf, getting questions answered, having problems resolved. The work that, frankly, I've done my entire adult life and believe that I can be of some real value now to the 102nd District.
Some challenges need someone who simply won't quit. Modern advocacy brings tenacity, strategy, and unwavering follow-through to every client it serves. Learn more at modernadvocacyllc.com.
Fraud and unnecessary lawsuits are driving up car insurance costs for New Yorkers. That's why lawmakers should support Governor Hochul's efforts to stop bad actors from gaming the system. Visit keepnewyorkaffordable.org to learn more.
Have you talked with the new Assembly Minority Leader, Ed Rah, about this decision to run for Assembly prior to announcing, and what conversations, if any, have you had since announcing?
Ed and I have been good friends. Actually, I served as the Assistant Minority Leader pro tem when he first joined the state assembly all those years ago. We have been and remain in regular contact with one another, and so look forward to working with him and being an active member of the conference. But also, by the way, we'll continue to reach out to Republican and Democrat members in both houses.
Did he have any questions for you when you said, "Hey, I want to rejoin the Assembly"?
He told you what I think he told me, which is I couldn't think of anyone more qualified to run for the state legislature. We'd love to have you back in the conference. And so I understand the intrigue. I mean, there are certainly people who think public service is a ladder. You just continue to climb up and further away from your constituents, and then you cash out. To your point, I don't know that being a town supervisor fits exactly with my focus of public service at the moment. But trying to craft legislation, whether my name's on it or not, working across the aisle to move some things. They're very effective members. By the way, there are effective legislators that are Republican members of both houses. They've been acknowledged as effective members, and they work well with majority members in order to get certain pieces of legislation adopted. There's also the effectiveness of being an advocate on the ground, and I think that I can be helpful and ultimately would be a resource to the people of this district.
In a previous interview, you said how you have never been a backbencher in your life, except for sometimes in sporting events. But here in a chamber where seniority rules, how is that going to impact your approach? Do you feel like you need to be deferential to some of your GOP colleagues who have been here longer? I mean, what is being a freshman member going to mean to you?
Well, I don't know how I get treated as far as the time served and return to office. I'm certainly be deferential to the members of the conference and certainly to leadership. I have no reason to do otherwise. But I do think having, by the way, in a very short time when I was here, moved from freshman member to assistant minority leader. Sure. I would say to you that a lot of it is how you approach issues. If you're invited to dialogue or conversation across the aisle, particular policy ideas, events that occur here at the Capitol that allow you to be a part of a conversation. Most of the time, if you're earnest and honest about that, you're welcome to it, and frankly can be effective in participating. And so, from my perspective, it's not about bigfooting somebody or screaming to get to the front of the line. It's how can we move the conversation. I'd also say to you that part of my interest is to try to help support other members who, frankly, whether they be members or candidates, want to give voice to alternative views here in New York. And so that means building up a political operation that does that as well. Not to Bigfoot anybody, but there ought to be successful alternate views that are supported statewide, and I want to be part of that as well.
Well, I want to come back to that idea of coalition building, but I think about the experience that you are going to bring now to this work. You've served in a federal transportation role. You've done a lot of work with people with special needs. So theoretically, you'd say, hey, that person would be great as the ranker on the transportation committee, or great on the ranker committee for developmental disabilities. But again, you're a freshman. So how do you approach something like that? And do you have to come hat in hand to the ranker and say, hey, maybe we should flag this? Or do you feel like I'm one of 40-something assembly minority members in 2027, and I'm just going to, speak my piece?
Well, first, let's see how that plays out, because I think that some members have already certainly reached out and asked for, at least my view on certain things.
Okay.
Can
you give an example?
Well, actually, accessibility and disability is one of the mental health services and Medicaid reform. Those are areas that frankly, I've spent a lifetime engaged in. Unless things have changed drastically, and I don't believe they have, a lot of this is still working with advocacy and stakeholder groups. Mm-hmm. And so I come to the table with a legitimate voice in the disability community, and mental health services now in the state of New York actually model what was Dutchess County's community-based mental health program. And so being invited into the dialogue is good enough. That's the first step. I mean, as long as you're in the room offering good ideas, believe me, and I've seen it happen. Again, whether your name's on the legislation or not, or the policy or not, you can move the dialogue and move the conversation. That's my goal. It's not to jump in and take charge. It's to try to talk about issues that are of critical importance in the hopes that we can move the dialogue just slightly. I mean, listen, would you have guessed a year ago the governor would be talking about, delaying, if not, I wouldn't say scrapping, but delaying the CLCPA? I wouldn't have. They were full speed ahead. Now, did that change because some Republican talked about it? No, because there are real issues on the ground of questions of affordability, and how do they get confronted, and how do we drive down cost? And those conversations happen all the time. And if you're in the room, you're able to move that dialogue just a little bit. That's my goal.
Is there anything from your experience in Congress or running for federal office that you think you can bring to the way either the Assembly Republicans run their government office, or the Republican Assembly Campaign Committee runs its election campaign? Is there anything that you think could be imported to the Albany realm?
Well, listen, I wouldn't be so bold as to offer advice on in full view of the rest of the state, but I will say to you that the Republican Assembly Campaign Committee does a fabulous job. I mean, they really are a good institution and have really run terrific campaigns across the state
with extremely limited resources.
Exactly, extremely limited resources. Although matching funds, not something that I supported, but the matching funds program at least provides some access to resources, taxpayer resources. Unfortunately, that does start to level the playing field. I think there is some value to shaking up the status quo here. I think that even you might become victim to it, perhaps, which is there's sort of this cyclical, repetitive approach to the same issues year in and year out. And some of that needs to be altered to a bit. I mean, shaking up the way in which advocacy happens here, I think would make a substantial difference in moving the needle on some issues that are of some importance. And by the way, what that means is perhaps talking to stakeholder groups and advocacy groups that maybe Republicans don't always sit down with, and try to find those areas of commonality in order to build coalitions that can move the conversation.
Well, it's interesting to hear you bring up that point about sort of the fresh eyes, because I often think about the new reporters that come to the LCA, the Legislative Correspondents Association, and they might be horrified by the way the government does certain things. They're up here late at night, the budget's not done on March 31st, whereas the members who have been covering the Capitol for a long time go, yep, sure, that's the way it is. And you're talking about the importance, though, of fresh eyes, and you aren't fresh eyes, though. As you pointed out, you served in the assembly. So why not let somebody else who hasn't been in government come through the 102nd Assembly District? Why not, try to lift up someone new to bring, actual fresh eyes to this?
Well, first of all, I don't accept your observation that I'm not fresh eyes. I mean, fresh eyes aren't necessarily you just got here. It could also be that you've gone out into the world and experienced other opportunities and other areas of service in this case, and can bring some of that experience, those relationships, those opportunities, and your own personal and professional experience back to the table. I think there's value certainly to that. We talk about Congress. I spent 12 years in county government. I can tell you that observing the onslaught of state mandate and state direction that gets forced down onto local property taxpayers, onto county governments, town, village, and school district governments, experiencing that and coming back here, that's fresh, that's new, that's different, and so there's value certainly in that. The question of who represents the 102nd Assembly District isn't necessarily up to me or you. It's up to
it's
I'm
definitely
one voter.
not up to me.
I know. I get one vote, and I get
113.
Exactly. So I get one vote. So it'll be up to the voters.
Your wife's probably on board, though.
I think so. No, she's on board, but she hasn't told me how she's voting yet. No, my wife will be voting for me as well. So we're up to 2 now.
Yeah.
But my point, of course, is that it's up to the voters to make that determination. But you bring up, I think, what is a good sort of a storyline or analogy. Yeah, you get new members who come in here to the LCA and they've witnessed this and they're appalled.
Yeah.
And then we all say, oh no, that's just the way it goes. It isn't always the way it's been. In fact, again, in 2006 and 2007, there were some very significant. There was shakeup of the operation of state government. Subsequent to that, and to your point, whether it was led by the governor, led by the state Republicans, or led by Assembly Republicans, there was a substantial change. Medicaid cap, property tax cap, personal income tax, largest personal income tax credit, reduction in taxes.
Pension reform?
Well, yes, absolutely. I mean, I was here for
Tier 5.
5. But by the way, and some proposals that we were able to stop. If you remember at the time, the comptroller wanted the capacity to allow municipalities to borrow against their. Can you imagine borrowing to pay their pension costs? And we were able to scuttle that. And my point of bringing that up is only to say that it isn't acceptable to let this place run year in and year out just the same way. Because we're not getting a better outcome. The state continues to lead the nation in outmigration. We continue to shoulder the highest burden of cost and taxation of any people in the country, and we are the least friendly to business. And so the communities that I come from are being hollowed out, and families are being pushed away. I mean, listen. Yes, the governor said to me, get on a bus and go to Florida. Not quite sure why she told me to get on a bus. I mean, I could have gotten there any other way, but that line
would have been uncomfortable.
Probably. But that line has now come back to haunt her because she's out begging millionaires to return.
Was a tongue-in-cheek reference in response to the patriotic millionaires, so I don't want to get into debating that with you. So
but I think there's value to this. I don't think that's the case. I mean, you can observe what you wish. The governor said she wants to be able to convince people to come back here, to support the institution of state government. But what she didn't say. At no point did she say that there are countless middle-class families being forced out. She didn't talk about the fact that whole communities are hollowed out. I mean, you go down main streets in some communities, and there's no occupants any longer. And so there needs to be a shaking up of the status quo in order to drive down costs, to make ourselves more competitive, and to bring community life, really rebuild the character and centers of community, which, by the way, you can do as a mediator, if you will, from the state assembly. I did it and want to continue to do it now in the 102nd District.
When bad actors stage car accidents, we all pay the price. Fraud and lawsuit abuse are driving up car insurance costs for New Yorkers. Governor Hochul is reforming liability laws to stop lawyers from gaming the system and help lower insurance costs. Florida made similar changes. Insurance costs are going down for most drivers, some up to 20%. Visit keepnewyorkaffordable.org to learn how these changes will put money back in your pocket and restore fairness to the civil justice system.
Support for Capital Press Room comes from National Fuel, working to help customers understand what drives energy bills, from taxes and state-mandated programs to market-driven price increases for natural gas, which utilities don't profit from. More information at betterplansnobands.com.
So you've done some consulting work since leaving the federal government. Yeah. Are you planning on doing any outside work while serving the assembly?
Well, only to the extent that that it's permissible within the state law and the state cap. But I've been very fortunate. I'm happy to providing some professional consulting work on accessibility issues and economic development with a focus on infrastructure around the country. It's been a great opportunity. But for me, again, returning home, returning to the district, and serving in public and providing some public services is my priority.
Well, lastly, thinking about your former county, what's your takeaway from the Dutchess County legislature flipping from red to blue in November?
Well, I think it's a few things. One, certainly Democratic voters were much more motivated during that election cycle. And again, I mean,
do you attribute that to local candidates generating fervor, or do you think that was a nationalized election?
Well, I've come to say that, the old Tip O'Neill line that all politics is local. I'm sure you must, say it or think it now. It feels like all politics is national now.
Yeah.
And so that's unfortunately the environment we're in. I think the state's effort to change local elections to even years is, it's clearly the kind of shameless politics that it is. Answering your question, I do think it was a nationalized election, certainly more fervor and more energy, I think, among Democratic voters. But what I would also offer to you is that Dutchess County has been overwhelmingly shifting to Democrat enrollment. I think when I was there were 13 to 15,000 more Democrats than Republican when I served as county executive. When I left, I think it was 20. Now it's, I think, 35,000 more Democrats to Republicans. And so at some point, the dam does break. Now, the good news is, I'll take this moment to give credit where credit's due. I do think that we've had good quality local Republican leadership in lots of our counties. Sue Sereno's a wonderful county executive. I don't think it was reflective on her service. I think the numbers are what they are. The other I'll offer to you is that I remember when we went through redistricting last time, in Dutchess, I led the effort to, renew our and rewrite our ethics code, strictest ethics law of any county in the state, establish term limits for countywide elected officials, and create an independent redistricting structure. So we have legislative districts that are, reflective of communities. They're not gerrymandered in any particular way. And so that means everybody's going to have to compete differently. And I'm actually very, very happy that independent redistricting went into effect. And Dutchess has shifted. The Mid-Hudson Valley has shifted. And that's, by the way, for the statewide race, I think where the race comes down to. What happens in the Hudson Valley?
I'm glad you bring up the statewide race, because this is my actual final question, because the Assembly race is one head scratcher, but the real head scratcher is a statement you made recently talking about the governor's race when you said, I think the race is actually very competitive and very close. What is it about the current landscape that makes you feel like it's very competitive and very close? Because by most metrics, whether it's fundraising, the public polling, or the national mood in a midterm election where the Republicans control the White House, would suggest that Kathy Hochul is going to cruise to re-election. So what was that statement based on?
The state is unaffordable, and the underlying argument among voters still remains. Why are we here? And so you can ask that question to Republicans and Democrats, and there are like-minded Democrats and Republicans who truly are not happy with the direction the state's in. If you look at I'd never pretend to be a pundit. I'm not. I don't want to pretend to be one. I'm an elected official and a public servant. That's the space I'm in.
Well, the last Siena poll had the governor up 20 points over her Republican challenger.
Well, I would offer to you that first, Siena's often had some difficulty with strong numbers. I mean, I just would argue that many times they oversample Democrats and oversample New York City as far as a turnout. And
even
the race,
historically, they're considered one of the strongest pollsters in the country.
You made a statement. They are historically among the strongest pollsters in the country. I think in New York, as we move into the later in the year, you will see but they will accelerate in their proximity more with Siena. I do think the race is much closer than they project. I think that I think right now, again, Hudson Valley, Long Island, and upstate, the governor is not popular.
Sure. But like you said, it's the nationalization of elections.
Yes. Well, yes, I did. The one time I take issue is gubernatorial races are tricky. I mean, they truly are. And so you have a scenario where voters will be focused on whether or not Kathy Hochul deserves another 4 years, whether or not they're better off today than they were 4 years ago, whether or not things are going in the right direction. And there is no poll that suggests that people are satisfied with the direction the state of New York's going in. Sure. And so there's that energy that certainly can be tapped by Bruce Blakeman. He comes to the table with a political resume, if you will, that is in line with a lot of New York voters. He comes to the table with a pretty strong voter base of Long Island, and if can produce some of the numbers that Lee Zeldin produced, automatically becomes competitive. You'd have to tell me that the voters who didn't vote for Mayor Mondami are going to show up for Kathy Hochul, or the ones that did are going to show up for Kathy Hochul. Perhaps they all do. Perhaps the stars align and things are just significantly in her favor. Upstate New York, by the way, I obviously did very well in upstate New York in 2018. Several 100,000 votes that didn't necessarily show up 4 years ago. Are they now? They're there. They didn't vote, or Lee didn't get exactly those numbers in upstate New York. Can you create a mix of the right numbers in each of these regions? Yeah, you can. And so it's competitive. Does that mean it's a slam dunk? No. I mean, everything's got to go very, very well for Bruce Blakeman. He's got to work very, very hard. He is. And you're starting to see some mobilization and some enthusiasm, and I think that's good. It's good for all of us.
Where do you see the hard work? I mean, he's made a handful of appearances upstate, but the fundraising's not there. He's relied heavily on Nassau County to basically prop up his campaign.
I'd offer you I worked really hard to fundraise, and people were frightened not to cut checks.
Yeah, so can you talk about where you think that work is translating, or how we should think about it if we're not necessarily seeing him or the numbers?
Well, I think you're starting to see him make it around the state. Certainly in upstate, these last couple of weeks has been working Rochester, Buffalo, trying to get out Syracuse, try to sort of recapture some ground, if you will, from months ago in upstate New York, and so he's making himself present. They've started a mail campaign. There's promotion out there in the community now. I know I've had voters get mail from the Blakeman campaign.
Who is this guy?
Well, but that's where it starts.
Oh yeah, it's a long road to Tipperary
and digital presence, and so all of that adds up to something. I mean, I still laugh to this day. I won every media market except New York City when I ran in 2018. That doesn't mean you win. It just means though that it is a process, and he's getting his name out there, and he's building his team, and he is fundraising, and it's going to start to show. And again, I think this race is going to get closer anyway.
Sure. Oh, definitely.
And so, but then the question becomes, where is the governor at that point? What's the cost of doing business in the state of New York? Are we still leading the nation in outmigration? There are going to be issues that come that naturally narrow this race. But again, I do think it's winnable. I do think that it's much closer, certainly than some polls suggest. And I think there's an opportunity here. At the same time, I think that we ought to be talking about the fact that we have a state government that, frankly, is one party, and it will, and the state legislature may not flip. Certainly, no, we're not going to win the assembly, but there's value to having quality, capable, alternative views and voices out there speaking. And for my sake, the goal is to not only provide the service here, but to try to build that up, build a political action committee that will support candidates who maybe they're brand new young faces who want to get out into public service, want to be there to support them. Maybe there's other like-minded candidates like myself who want to get back in the game and on the arena. I want to be supportive of them. And so build an operation that can at least give some support to people who are earnest and honest about trying to drive down costs and confront the challenges that face the state of New York. That's what I'm going to be engaged in.
Well, Mark, I appreciate you having the conversation today.
Me too.
We're a few days away from the budget deadline, and as the ranking member of the Ways and Means Committee, I'm starting to think my invitation got lost in the mail to those invitations. Is that something I should continue to look for, or just not worry about it right now?
Mr. Paulson, they keep raising the cost of postage. I think the postage stamp was not a forever stamp, and we had insufficient funds on our stamp.
Well, I'm not surprised with our budget situation. Thank you. I'm just joking, though.